Welcome to the Becoming Her podcast, where we have real conversations about healing, growth, purpose, womanhood, and becoming the woman God has called us to be. Today, I'm so honored to welcome a beautiful and powerful guest, Deanna Cooper, author, speaker, and holistic wellness advocate whose work centers around healing, self discovery, and personal transformation. Through her books and her voice, Dina creates space for honest conversations around parental wounds, identity, self love, and what it truly means to heal from the inside out. And she is the author of Soul Cry and Broken Home, a Trini girl's journey to self love and healing parental wounds. And her message reminds us that healing may not be linear, but it is possible. And today we are diving into a powerful conversation. Dina, welcome to the Becoming Her podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. We are so happy to have you here.
Excited to be here.
Yes, yes, yes. So tell me, what first led you into writing about healing, especially around parental wounds and self discovery?
Honestly, I had no idea that writing my second book would have involved parental wounds.
Mm,
All I knew at the time is that I wanted to write about my journey to self-love because this book initially was supposed to be called First Love Yourself.
okay.
But I believe that God has a sense of humor. So from self-love, it flowed into healing those wounds. And also, I think the topic of parental wounds is still very taboo within our Caribbean culture.
Mhm.
And I believe in challenging the status quo. So I always believe that my gifts and experiences are not just for me. And there's a quote, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but something to the effect of when we authentically show up as ourselves, we give others the permission to do the same. So, in
Correct.
as much as writing my last book cost me certain connections, I needed to write for the little Dina or the young lady out there who might be wondering how to maneuver that situation, wondering if there is hope. And I wanted to show others that healing is possible and that parental wounds need to be addressed if we desire the generation after us to be better. So I think ultimately it was just a serendipitous experience.
Yes, I love that, and I believe that this podcast will help so many women just to kind of,
Definitely.
raise that light about parental wounds. I myself experience it, so I love this topic.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So when you reflect on your own healing journey, what was the moment you realized you needed to confront your past instead of avoiding it?
Hmm. I would say that would have been around October, November 2024, thereabouts. I had been separated from my ex-husband for a few months. I was a total emotional wreck. And I would have gone through several stages of grief at that point. And I told myself that I could no longer blame him for everything. I had to take ownership of what I contributed to us being separated and ultimately being divorced. So I had to face a truth, and that truth is that I had to accept the fact that I had daddy issues.
Mm,
So because of that, I expected my husband to fill those gaps. I placed the responsibility of a father on him, and that wasn't his function as a father, and that wasn't fair. Yes, I understand that a man is supposed to lead, but there's a different form of love that is shared between a husband and a wife as opposed to a father and a daughter. So,
correct.
in order for me to move forward, I had to confront those parental wounds and I began therapy. And it was one of the best decisions I could have made to change my life and to be able to look inward as opposed to trying to deflect that pain on somebody else.
Love that. Well said, well said. And I loved what you said about, daddy wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what parts of your past have been the hardest to reconcile while still trying to build, create, and evolve as a woman stepping into healing and purpose?
Oh my God. I think it would have been putting myself out there
Mm,
while still battling with the thought that I wrote a book on healing while the relationship I have with my mother is still very strained.
mm,
And also being a woman who has experienced separation and divorce. Because, I know to myself that I was rooted in the illusion of perfectionism. Because here I am showing up on TikTok and IG
yeah,
and telling people about self-love and healing parental wounds when I was judging myself for facing divorce.
yeah, yeah.
I sold myself the narrative that I was supposed to have this perfect
This
marriage or this perfect
one.
life, or the most healed relationship with my mother before I feel worthy to put myself out there. So
Mhm.
I had to tell myself that my scars are what makes my life more relatable because people don't resonate with perfection. They resonate with what John C. Maxwell calls failing forward.
Yes.
So ultimately, owning the parts of my life that actually shaped me into the version of who I am now.
Yeah, I love that because I mean we both kind of going through this similar situation with the
Yeah.
and separation, and I would tell you the same thing as well. Feeling embarrassed, feeling like you're
Mm-hmm.
not good enough because you're getting too
Exactly.
close. But if it is, you don't really address that, it can really affect you as you evolve, into this new place that God wants you to be.
So
So
true.
I love that. Your book Soul Cry and Broken Home both carry deep emotional weight. What was the most difficult truth you had to write on the page?
When it
Oh,
comes to soul cry, I would say that the most difficult truth for that was writing the theme ownership is a facade.
hmm.
Because within a year, I had to come to terms with losing my grandfather,
Wow.
losing my marriage, and also a friendship of 10 years that I thought would have lasted a lifetime.
Wow.
You know, I had to accept that I own nothing. I
Hmm.
only get to experience things and people for a moment,
Yeah.
and that I really have to, make the best while I have them. And when it comes to broken home, I cannot really say to pinpoint one single most difficult truth because I mean, I cried so much during the writing process of that book. It
Wow.
felt like, birthing something greater than me through pain. But I had to understand that there was and still is purpose in that pain. But I think just accepting that vulnerability isn't weakness.
Hmm. And I mean, that season when you're writing Soul Cry, that
Mm-hmm.
season felt like everything was, you were just losing things. I'm sure you felt like that, where everything was just,
Yes, you know.
yeah, I
Left,
think,
right, and center.
yeah, I think for me, I feel like I'm in that season, like everything just walking away. And I'm like, Lord,
Mm-hmm.
why are you stripping everything away, Lord? So
Yeah.
I could relate to that emotional weight. I think like that emotional weight that you face, I'm feeling it as well, right in this season. So that is something. But I know that, we have to let go and things have to leave us in order for God to, breathe more and breathe better. So
So
it's
true.
only, yeah. So how has your understanding of self-love evolved from your first book to the one you're currently working on? Because I know you're working on something now.
Yeah. Um, So I'm working on my third book, but to answer the question, there was a time that I believe that self-love was just, booking a spa day, having your nails done and all of that. But I've come to appreciate while those things are important, if your mind and your emotions aren't in alignment, just fixing the outward would only help so much. While
Yeah,
I understand that as women, we do show up better when we feel good about our physical appearance, we do have to go beyond the surface level and really put in the work to ensure that our mental and emotional health matches our external aesthetic. So
correct.
naturally, once we are good on the inside, it shows on the outside. And I feel like there's a glow that goes beyond the physical that people recognize.
Hmm.
So in terms of how to say that has changed since, I would say that I'm now more firmer with my boundaries and I'm not afraid to say no. So
Uh,
if something isn't in alignment with the way I envision my energy flowing, I don't participate.
I
When
love
it comes to the book I'm currently working on, which will be my third self-love, in that book more looks like, adapting the identity and the mindset shift of a person you envision yourself becoming,
that.
even when you don't have the physical evidence to back that version of you.
Yes, I love that. It's like fate. Yes,
Yes.
correct,
Faith
correct.
and delusion.
That's right. Yeah, listen,
Audacity.
I'm telling you, we have to be delusional, in what we want.
Correct.
Yeah, because, just to add to what you said, I think a lot of
Hmm.
women, just to go back a bit, a lot of women, they dress up, they look good, and that's nothing is wrong with that, but they are not working on the core.
Correct.
And this is why we have a lot of bitter people in the
So
workplace
true.
and around us. Some of our family as well, just bitter. But they're
Correct.
looking good. But when you talk to
Well put together.
exactly. And I think there are a lot of unhealed persons. They need to take the time to work on themselves.
So
And
true.
and like you said, that glow, that special
Hmm.
glow, they will say, "What you doing, girl? What you eating?" It's not like,
Exactly.
it's not just what I'm eating, but it's my peace of mind. It's how I'm
Correct.
feeling.
Correct.
And a lot of people are not there as yet. This is why we
So
have a
true.
lot of angry persons walking around. So
Hmm.
I love what you said. I really, really love that. And you said about delusion. Listen, not everybody understand what you're saying, huh?
It's true.
But you really got to be delusional right now.
Yes, it's fate. I mean, to me, I think delusion, people laugh at that. Like one of my
Yes,
girlfriends from church, she was like, it's not delusion, it's fate. I said it's the same
it's
thing.
the same
Because
thing.
when you think about fate from a biblical point, you know, you have to believe without a doubt that what you want in your mind is
Yes,
possible. And that to me is a form of delusion and audacity. You
correct,
know,
correct.
and if we go in biblical, the Bible talk about
Mm,
according to your faith, you will have it. So
that's
it's
right.
only as far as you could think, as far as you could imagine as what your reality will become.
Exactly. As Neville says, Neville Goddard says, live with the end in mind. Don't look at the
Correct.
reality, but just believe that it is done and it is done. Nobody would
So true.
understand, but you just continue building and people will look at you like you're mad, but that's okay.
Exactly. You know what
Yeah.
you're working towards.
Exactly. And you describe healing as not being linear. What does that look like in your personal life on hard days?
Well, I would say, my job. I don't talk about it that much, but I would share for this purpose.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
employed as a police officer. So in that job in itself, it takes a lot of emotional, mental, physical tools on you.
Mm,
So for me, on the hard days, I have to remember to be gentle with myself. I
mm,
have to remind myself that I'm doing better than I think I am. And because I'm such a high achiever, I tend to move the goalpost for myself very often. So I have to tell myself, you accomplished this. It's okay to bask in this for a moment before you go forward. It's okay to just take a day for yourself, take a mental day, even though the culture in policing is that, you shouldn't take a sick day if you're not sick. But
yeah.
I feel like in our culture, not just in policing, but in Trinidad and Tobago, it feels so taboo just to take a mental day. But
Yes.
if you aren't good mentally for yourself, you cannot show up in your capacity for your job, for your children, for your family, for nobody.
Mm,
So, for me, on the hard days is just reminding myself that, hey, you're human. It's okay to rest.
yes.
If God rested, who are we?
You
So,
understand?
it's just just learning to be gentle with myself.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, and I honor you as well because sometimes I would hear you say, Les, I'm going to just do this for myself and I'm just going to cook a nice meal. And I love that because not
Mhm.
much persons are taking any time to rest or do something for themselves, not just in nap, but other things as well on hard days. And this is
Yeah.
where the mental part is also. So
Sometimes it's just doing nothing at all.
exactly, which is very hard to do at times.
For real.
Exactly. So as a certified chef and creator of, the pivot method, how do you connect wellness of the body with emotional and mental healing?
I would say I believe that true wellness goes beyond physical appearance.
Mm,
A healthy body means nothing if your mind is constantly at war. So,
correct.
we have all these unprocessed emotions and sometimes our self-worth as women is dependent on external validation. So I
Mm,
believe that wellness is deeply interconnected, with what we eat, how we think, how we speak to ourselves, the habits that we practice daily, the environments we remain in, all of these things shape our overall well-being. So
yes.
through the pivot method, I teach that food is not just fuel, it's also emotional. So many people eat from places of stress, trauma, comfort, abandonment, insecurity, and sometimes self-punishment. So, I've learned that before someone could truly transform physically, they often need to heal mentally and emotionally first. So
Yes.
that is why my approach is not rooted in punishment or restriction or unrealistic standards. It's in discipline, self-awareness, identity transformation, and of course, self-respect.
Hmm.
So as a chef, I would help people to build healthier relationships with food by showing them that, the importance of nourishing their bodies is not to be, it shouldn't be making you feel miserable or it
Yeah.
shouldn't be feeling unattainable. So, as their coach, I would help them to understand the psychology behind behaviors, beliefs, and habits. And I would encourage them to ask the difficult questions, why do I struggle with consistency? Why do I always abandon myself? Because the easiest thing to start is to continue.
Hmm.
So I would also encourage them to ask, why do I feel worthy when I look at only when I look a certain way? So those questions matter just
Yes.
as much as your calories and your workout. So when I created the pivot method, it was because I realized many people they don't lack information. We are in an age of information, but they lack healing, they lack structure, accountability, and the belief in themselves that they could actually do it. So when people begin taking care of their bodies, I believe everything flows from there. And that's the first act of self-love to practice for a long time to come. So,
Yeah.
that physical discipline starts influencing their confidence, emotional resilience, their boundaries, their mindset, and even their standards. So, to me, wellness is holistic. It's about learning how to feed your body, to renew your mind, to regulate your emotions, and to rebuild the relationship with yourself all
Yes.
at the same time.
Love that. Love that. And that is something that the pivot method is something that is about to come. Yes?
Yes.
Right. So we need to look out, women, look out for the pivot method by Dina. You will see it advertising.
Yes.
It's about to be
Very
something amazing.
soon.
So you definitely want to be a part of that. And I love that.
Thank you.
Yes. So what misconceptions do people often have about healing? Because you talk a lot about healing that you wish
Mhm.
more people understood.
In terms of, could you repeat the
Yes.
question?
What misconceptions do people often have about healing that you
I
wish they would
believe.
understand?
hmm
Mhm.
I think a lot of time people believe once you start the healing process, it's supposed to have a timeline attached to it.
Yeah.
And if you know, healing is
Correct.
something that you just rest down and you never struggle with it again. So
Yes.
I think oftentimes people expect healing to work in a straight line. It must be quick. It must be looking, aesthetically pleasing and motivational all the time. But the fact of the matter is healing could be very messy. It
Yes.
could be uncomfortable and it's going to cause you to confront parts of yourself that you just continuously swept under the rug. So I feel like more people, if they understood that healing doesn't automatically erase triggers or pain or difficult
Yeah.
emotions, they would have more grace towards others. Because sometimes healing look like recognizing unhealthy patterns that were once normal to you. And not because something is normal mean that it's correct.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like setting boundaries where you are afraid. Sometimes it's simply choosing not to return to the version of yourself that, you're
Correct.
abandoning your own needs because it's so easy for us as women to pour into everybody else and not ourselves.
Hmm.
Right? I also think that people confuse distracting themselves with healing. So, you're staying busy, you're going to the gym, you're entertaining new relationships, you're constantly starting over. And these things doesn't necessarily mean that you heal.
Mm-hmm.
True healing requires self-awareness, accountability, reflection, and just doing that intentional inner work.
Correct.
And you have to be able to confront your beliefs, the environment, and the emotional wounds that got you to where you are.
Love
So
that.
I think, recognizing that is most important for me.
Yes. And in other words, you're saying sit with it.
Definitely sit with the discomfort, sit with the
That's right.
discomfort.
I love that. Yeah. And you know what is so awesome is that sometimes you think you heal, but then a certain situation arises and you realize that you're not there as yet. You have to continue healing. You know,
So true.
you're going good in your relationship, and then your relationship ended, and then you realize you have to start over again because now you're emotionally, not at a good place, and now you have to sit with it.
Correct.
Yeah, so I love that. Now, in your work with women, what patterns of struggles do you see most often when it comes to self-worth and emotional recovery?
Mm. Um, I would say adapting to an identity shift.
Hmm.
I noticed that a lot of women, they genuinely want to change, they want to heal, they want healthier relationships, but they struggle with releasing that old version of themselves. Even though that version is rooted in pain and survival and self-sabotage. So a major pattern that I see is that women, I could include myself because I was once there. We tie our self-worth to external things like the relationships,
Yes.
validation, appearance, how productive we are,
Mm-hmm.
how much followers we might have on social media,
Correct.
or how much we can do for others. And because of this, when those things don't meet the expectations or things change, we begin to question our value as a person.
This
So
is
many women know how to point to everyone else. And I think that's something that we have been taught to do from
yes.
children. When you get big, you had to do this, you had to do the other. Take care of your children, take care of the man, take care of everybody. And you learn to do those things without guilt. But when it comes to you, you feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So I also see a lot of emotional burnout from constantly operating in survival mode. So
Yeah.
many women spend time just being strong, overextending, tolerating unhealthy
Mhm.
behavior, suppressing their own emotions. And it takes longer to recognize who they are outside of the struggle,
That's
so
right.
much so that, they learn to master that survival.
Hmm.
They do have true peace.
Yes.
And also, having that, because of all those things, they are inconsistent in their internal beliefs. So,
Yes,
a woman might say she wants confidence or discipline or a healthy love transformation, but deep down, she still don't think that she is worthy of those things.
that's
And
right.
whether people realize it or not, our behaviors eventually align with our identities and our beliefs. So if
Ex
someone unconsciously believes that they are not deserving, they will do everything to self-sabotage that, even the things that they prayed for. So,
yes,
that's why I focus heavily on mindset and discipline, emotional awareness, and identity transformation, not just for physical results, but lasting transformation doesn't happen because you change your routine. It happens when you start seeing yourself, the way you desire to see yourself and embodying those habits of the woman you truly desire to be.
yes. I love that. I love that so much. So tell me, what has been the hardest part of forgiveness for you in everything I experienced so far? Was it forgiving others or learning how to forgive yourself?
Honestly, it was twofold.
Mm.
It was difficult for me to forgive myself for the choices I made because I allowed the shame of what people would think hearing my story, get the better of me. And for a long time, I was telling myself that narrative of who would listen to me knowing that, I'm getting a divorce? Who would listen to me knowing that, I wrote this book and still, the relationship isn't perfect with my mother and I. But,
Yes,
those choices made me who I am today. And I no longer live in that regret. And the second part would be, forgiving my parents, but also remembering to constantly give grace. It's
yes,
difficult to give grace when you feel that people could have done better. But when I began to understand how many times I have been given grace in my own life, it became easier. It's challenging, but it's a bit easier to extend grace now.
yes, yes, yes. I love that. I love that so much. And you said so much. And I know that, in this podcast, when women listen to it, they can identify things about themselves because you touched on
Definitely.
many things, huh?
Yeah.
Which I really love. Especially, what you said about, forgiveness as well.
Yeah.
And persons really believing in you and looking at your stuff and you're believing that, okay, maybe I'm not, who would listen to me? I'm getting divorced, Who am I, who's
Mm,
gonna read my stuff? But you have a lot of power and a lot of information, and women they wanna love this podcast. I know that for sure.
thank you.
If someone is listening right now and they feel stuck in their pain because you shared a lot, what would you say is the very first step towards becoming whole again?
I would tell them the first step is self-awareness, getting to know yourself on a deep, intimate level.
Yes.
We often hear that the first step to healing is acceptance, but just as I wrote in my book, you cannot accept what you are not aware of.
Yeah.
So, healing begins with recognizing your patterns, your pain, your triggers, and, the beliefs that you carried for years without questioning. So after the awareness comes the acceptance, and that's when you could do the real work. So I'd want them to know that healing is not a straight line, and being stuck today doesn't mean that you'll be stuck forever. Some days are heavier than others, but
Yes.
every intentional step you make for you matters. There will come a time where the pain that you were so used to will no longer be able to control you. So, so
Yeah.
just extending patience and self-compassion,
Yeah.
discipline. And that's really the first step, self-awareness.
And I would say that, self-awareness is not easy as well because when you
It
realize,
isn't.
yeah, when you realize that, you're not in a bad place, that you are broken,
Mm-hmm.
feel a way like your whole world is coming down. You feel worse than ever.
So
And
true.
yeah, and in that moment, I think like when you're aware of what is happening to you, you could seek a therapist. Like you said, you went to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you might need help just becoming aware. Because I think sometimes when you're aware of what's happening, the enemy will come and speak to you, and
So true.
you may feel like doing other things like suicide. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
at a place where you're actually self-aware, seek help because you may
Correct.
not know how to really deal with that, and then you can accept and all of that.
So true.
So excellent, because I remember when I was also at that point, just being aware of what happened and where my mom was and what she did, it broke me, and I felt even worse than before. But I got that help, so that's amazing. No,
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of the Becoming Her podcast and for sharing your heart, your truth, and your journey so openly with us today. I can relate to everything you said because I felt like everything you touched on, I've
Mm-hmm.
been there. And I was just snapping my finger in the back because you hit everything on the head, you know? Yeah, and I just want to, tell women as well that, no one is perfect. We are all going through this. We are all women
True.
trying to find our way.
So
So
true.
they need to listen to this podcast over and over until it resonates. Dina,
Right.
I want to say your story is a reminder that healing takes courage.
It does.
Yeah, growth takes intention.
Mm-hmm.
Even in broken places, beauty can still emerge because we are looking at you and we are seeing the beauty being emerged.
Thank
You
you
know,
so much.
yeah, I know this conversation is going to encourage, so many women who've been navigating pain, or for some women who have never touched on it before. This is like
Mhm.
the open a can
Yeah,
and realizing like, oh my gosh, I'm at a really bad place. I need to start working on myself.
so true.
Yeah, and it is about allowing women to, understand their identity, their self-worth and their journey and come back home to themselves.
Yeah, because I think as women, a lot of times we get so caught up in the titles of being a mother,
This
being
is
a
it.
wife, a auntie, this one,
Yeah,
that, who are we if
this
we
is
strip
it.
away all those titles
Ex-
beneath all of that, who is the core of you, of this
Exactly.
person that you're looking at in the mirror? So,
Yes.
I'm so grateful to be
Yeah.
part of this, and I'm very honored that, I'm
Yes.
able to share this space with you.
Yeah, and I just want to tell you that, you are about to be, you're now starting. This is just the beginning.
Hmm.
Your book will reach nations. I believe that every woman should have a copy of your book,
I
especially
received
ones who,
that.
yeah, and I believe that, you are about to move into new seasons of breakthrough and you are going to go global. So I
Thank
just
you.
want to wish you blessings upon blessings and you're going to get back everything that you have lost.
Amen.
Yeah, and to everyone listening, I pray this episode reminds you that your past does not disqualify your purpose.
Correct.
Healing is possible, and you are allowed to choose yourself, rebuild, and become the woman you were created to be. And I
Good.
just want to question, every woman, who are you without the titles? Who are you
Mhm.
without everything around you? Sit and let this question, be a part of your life. So thank you for tuning into the Becoming Her podcast. Until next time, keep healing, keep growing, and keep becoming her.